Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, John A. Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 3 of the anime series, Everything Becomes F, the Perfect Insider. And let me get it out of the way right away and say my one sort of penultimate gripe about this series remains the same after watching episodes 1, 2, and now 3 of it. So much is just sitting around with nothing happening. So much of this is just characters talking, and what they're talking about is largely uninteresting. It's not building or adding any depth to what's going on, and I have to wonder, in having found out through the comments that this is actually based on a novel, not even a light novel, but like I guess a series of novels that was expounded out of this one, following the sort of mystery investigations or adventures, misadventures, whatever it is, of the two primary characters of this series, Nishina Sono and Sakawa, respectively. I have to wonder if something is getting lost in translation from page to screen in anime form, because it feels like a lot of what's going on is just characters sitting around, contemplating, sometimes talking, sometimes trying to piece things together, and it's like just nothing's happening. There's no momentum, and it's like I have to almost assume that if you're reading the story, the novel version of this, there's probably a lot more in-depth, you know, seeing inside the minds of these characters, their thought processes, maybe inner monologuing, you know, questioning things, whatever it is. I can only assume that to be the case as somebody who reads novels fairly frequently, that a lot of that is sort of being sort of expunged for characters just to sit around, you know, Sakawa himself, just sucking down his cigarette, sitting up against the wall, and really not a lot of what he and Nishina Sono are talking about amounting to a whole hell of a lot. You know, a lot of these episodes have been boring, boring, boring. One crazy moment that gets me sucked in and speculating, you know. And it's just only mildly interesting. I mean, it should be much more interesting. There's so many other anime series out there that from beginning to end, it enraptures you, it sucks you in. And I'm just watching it, I'm like, get to something, get to something. Finally we got to something, you know, by the end of the episode. And we've ended with these cliffhangers that it's just like, in the aftermath, in the wake of episode 2's cliffhanger, it hadn't even occurred to me that Dr. Magata might actually be dead. I thought she was probably going for dramatic effect, catching everyone off guard, like she's sitting atop this P1 autonomous sort of delivery system within this facility, and she's trying to catch everyone off guard. When she gets down to the end of that hallway, she's probably going to leap off the thing, take off running, trying to get out, whatever it is, because of her being holed up for 15 years, as they say. And that's another thing, too. They're talking about her not having left that room for 15 solid years. And in this episode, they're kind of fuzzying the details because you hear spoken a few different times, nobody has ever gone in or out of that room for 15 years. Yet, am I remembering incorrectly that in the previous episode, they made the point of saying nobody has gone in or out of that room for 15 years, with the exception of the director. The director is the only one who can go in or out. It had to be implied, you know, that's what I was left with, that the director actually was the sole person who could go in or out. And then you also hear somewhat conflicting dialogue in this episode that seems to suggest Magata herself, if she had so chosen, could have left the room and wandered the facility. I'm not entirely sure on that. It was a little confused, and frankly, it's like, I almost feel like they're just sort of reneging what they've said to confuse you and keep the mystery unfolding, you know, that kind of thing. They think largely whoever the murderer was is probably still in the room and it's on lockdown. There's no other way in or out of it and everything like that. They have the camera footage. Sakawa's thinking somebody might have snuck out when they were all caught off guard. Well, it's not in the camera footage and everything like that. So that was pointless, you know. It's an avenue of investigation, yes, but I mean, it yielded no results. And that's a lot of what the dialogue is doing in this episode, yielding no results, going nowhere. With the exception of, much as I, you know, speculated and assumed would be the case, we are having much more of this conversation between Nishina Sono and Magata in that video conferencing format revealed to us little by little as we go on. I had, you know, assumed and speculated, as I say, that would be the fact of the scenario. And in this case, it's very interesting that the focus of the conversation is largely Nishina Sono's interests in Sakawa, how that came about. You know, she was performing magic card tricks or whatever, and he was the only intellectual adult, somebody on her intellectual level, or so she felt, that at first she was very upset with because he could figure out her trick. He called her on it effectively. But this then burgeoned into sort of being infatuated with him because he was her father's student or whatever it is. And it's kind of, one of the aspects about her losing her parents is something spoken in dialogue, and she's seemingly concerned about that. I wonder how well she knew her parents and whether or not her parents were her biological parents or whatever it is, because we have this unfolding sort of, there's a parallel going on between Nishina Sono and Magata when she was younger. Of course, we see her seemingly getting with the uncle. It was really uncomfortable last episode, and they kind of saved it for the last moments of this episode. We see that full-fledged, he's talking about she survived and took in all she could for 13 years. And at the age of 13, she had lived a lifetime, is what we're left to assume, and she felt she needed to lose something. We see her getting comfortable on his lap and him leaning in, and, apparently it's the virginity she felt she needed to lose, or at least that's his assumption of the scenario. And, again, skirting that uncomfortable line, but it does seem to be telling maybe in the hints that we've been seeing in that parallel between Nishina Sono and Magata. I mean, in the last episode, a lot of the dialogue in Magata's 13-year-old guys was almost parroted word for word by Nishina Sono, wanting to see things, the normal sort of mind doesn't think about, takes for granted, the underside of a train rail or whatever it is under the bridge, or, seeing the water of the ocean and, seeing it through a certain sort of mindset, or seeing it through a certain visual scope in a way, for such a highly intellectual mind. And in this episode, finding out that Nishina Sono lost, air quotes, her parents, did she ever really know her real parents is the question I'm left with, because not only do you have this infatuation with an older guy, which seems to coincide with Magata's being infatuated with her, air quotes, uncle. I don't know if it's really a blood relation or not, but in any case, an older man. You have a lot of that same sort of mind process dialogue between Nishina Sono and, Magata respectively. And I don't know, again, I speculated and was asking the question, is she just parroting something she heard from Magata, or are they really very similar in mind? And then in this episode, you know that the director has gone away, and I started to assume because you have Magata's body like sitting there, and we find out that she has had her limbs removed and all these different things. Who did that? Obviously, she couldn't have done it to herself. Somebody had to have killed this woman, or whomever this is, frankly. The director was the only one who was leaving. We never got introduced to. We don't know anything about. Maybe it was something he did and then he took off. Was he going to come back? Of course, when he does come back and he's bringing back the, air quotes, younger sister of Magata, well, that kind of threw a wrench in the works as well, because the sister comes off this helicopter and immediately she looks older to my eyes. She looks older very much to Nishina Sono and Saikawa's eyes. And there's this pointed, stark reaction she has when she looks upon Nishina Sono, who's standing out there waiting to greet her. And that, to me, it was almost like, is she recognizing some kind of familiarity in looking at Nishina Sono's face, and vice versa? Because Saikawa and Nishina Sono also make the point of saying that she looks very similar to Dr. Magata. This Miki Magata looks very similar to her apparently older sister. And a lot of different things started percolating in my mind at that point, along the lines of, number one, could Magata have worked with somebody, seduced maybe the director or someone, to allow for the sister to have been brought in previously, kill the sister, make it look like she killed, she was murdered, or faked her own death. Dr. Magata, in other words, faked her own death by killing her sister, and now this is the genuine Magata coming back to be the sort of chess master manipulator to just F with everybody. Another thought that I had was, if this is truly Magata's sister, was she looking at Nishina Sono because she recognized, oh, maybe this is my sister's daughter, maybe this is my niece, something along those lines, because Nishina Sono expresses having lost her parents, and we see that there was a relationship between Magata and this older man who may or may not have been her uncle. Could this be Magata's daughter? Could Nishina Sono be Magata's daughter? And that would explain why she was so consumed with finding out about this young woman's interests in Saikawa. You know, kind of like a mother trying to have a chat with her daughter. Oh, so you like a boy in school? You know, what got you attracted to him? You know, instead of being sort of really psychologically, you know, scouring someone's mind and trying to pick them apart, maybe there was something maternal there going on. I don't know. You know, those are the aspects that really did get my interest flowing. Amidst all of this nothing happening scenario, characters sitting around and really all of their sort of speculations and investigations, the little that they actually do, amounting to nothing. When we end with this cliffhanger and sort of looking at these 2 or 3 little, you know, sort of crumbs that have been left from beginning to end of the episode, with this cliffhanger that the director apparently was murdered in his helicopter when they're telling him, you know, radio the police or whatever. Well, who the hell could have done that? Who was on the roof? Who is, you know, manipulating things behind the scenes? Is this the real genuine Magata who was murdered? Is it, you know, like a fake out, like I say, where the sister is actually the real Magata? There's so many different things. And then, of course, you have this constant narration from this so-called uncle, who in the first episode, I think he was making a journal entry dated 2015. I think that's when this is all taking effect, 2015. And so it almost makes me wonder if somehow he is the puppet master. Like, could there have been something where he had a relationship with this young woman? He's describing her in every detail, but every description is because of his own obsessive mindset with her. You know, the Lolita effect, where she seduces him and then he can't let go of it ever again. And maybe as she is becoming older, he's either becoming disinterested or she's becoming disinterested. Maybe she's pulling away from him and it's aggravating him, and he sort of, his mind breaks, you know, because it's something in the lineage, something in the DNA of this particular family unit. And maybe he sort of murders her out of vengeance, you know. Maybe that wedding gown that she's apparently decked out in, maybe that's symbolic of the fact that you can only be mine. You can't escape me. You know, whatever you've experienced, we've been on this journey together. You made me a part of it. Now you want to spurn me and turn me away. And maybe it's him who murdered her. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, those are the primary themes I'm left with in speculation, in interest. Amidst all of this go-nowhere material, as I call it, you know, when they make these points, it's either blatant misdirections to take you away from the actual unfolding mystery and the events and what's really going on, or they're blatantly showing you the truth, you know, answering the mystery, but then they have all this other stuff going on coinciding with it to take your attentions away from it again. And I don't know if they are being expert in their pacing, if they're expertly timing it and you know, revealing things in a way that it's all going to come to this great crescendo at the end of the series, and we're going to be like, oh my god, yes, it was so magnificent the way they, you know, seeded these elements all the way through. Or if it's this very overly pretentious, trying to make itself to, you know, out to be much more intellectual than it really is, much more mystifying than it really is. And it's just going to be like, well, we knew all of this. They were just misdirecting us time and time again away from what we already knew to be the case. And then in the end, trying to reveal it as though, hey, weren't we clever? You know, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this series. It is stumping me as far as I'm watching it, and I'm struggling to get through so much of it because there's just no results are being yielded. And again, some of those details, it seems like they can't get their story straight. I don't know if this is characters just being out of the loop and they're expressing just what they know of the scenario, or if they're blatantly trying to misdirect and confuse us, the viewer, or what, you know. But again, so much of these episodes, really, it just goes nowhere, and I'm not invested. I don't care. I want them to get to something. They eventually do get to something, but then we just, boom, that's the end of the episode, you know? And the things that I'm left speculating about, like I say, as of this point, is this even the genuine Dr. Magata who was murdered? Could it have been somebody else put in her place? Could this sister really be the genuine Magata, or is it really just the sister? And is there maybe a whole dynamic where they see this similarity in Shinosono because maybe there's more relation going on there than we as yet know and will be revealed to us later? Or could that be completely wrong? Could it just be a coincidence that these two women are very similarly minded, and one is going to be on a sort of path of redemption and path of a partnership with Saikawa in this mystery unfolding adventure, sort of like the Scooby-Doo gang, or is there more to it? I honestly don't know. It's just really strange and really confusing, especially when set against so many other anime series that I'm watching right now, where so much can happen in an episode, so much can I talk about. And it's ironic because I'm sitting here for just under 20 minutes yapping my ass off about this particular episode where I felt so much didn't even happen. So I guess they got me there. I guess they got me. I'm sitting here talking about it, speculating about it. So I guess it was effective enough. But it just didn't feel like it until the very end of the episode when I'm suddenly putting all these little bits and pieces together and speculating about it. But I'd love to hear from you guys. I'll leave it to you guys to let me know in the comments below whether you loved it, hated it, any which way you are viewing this particular series. Do you agree with me that you think maybe, something was lost in translation from novel page to screen? Do you think that better serves the mystery, or do you think it's a disservice to us, the viewers, trying to make sense of it? Love it or hate it, whatever your POV happens to be. Love having the conversation with you guys. So yeah, otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this. I hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.